I'm gonna need you to raise your glass. I don't care what you put in it. Here's the nights that you can't take back. We live hard, but we love to laugh. And we all thought that we'd get rich fast. Hop the plane out for greener grass. Found out the greenest cash don't compare to the friends that last. See, we won't forget where we came from. The city won't change us. We beat to the same drum. No, we won't forget where we came from. This city can't change us. We beat to the same drum, the same drum. No matter where we go, we always find a way back home. No matter where we go, we always find a way back home. So here's to the cheap sunglasses, Red Bull and minivans, and people who had your back when the world didn't understand. See, we won't forget where we came from. The city won't change us. We beat to the same drum. No, we won't forget where we came from. The city can't change us. We beat to the same drum, the same drum. No matter where we go, we always find a way back home. No matter where we go, we always find a way back home. When time's losing and we're losing touch and fading away, we'll still be raising our cups to the same damn thing. Oh no, this city won't change us. 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 Won't change us. Hey, la da 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 da, la da 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 da. Oh, and no matter where we go, we always find a way back home. La da 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 da, la da 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 da. No matter where we go, we always find a way back home. No matter where we go, we always find a way back home. We always find a way back home. Yeah, we always find a way back home.
This is Zozobra, Legacy of Fire.
Welcome to Fort Marcy Park in Santa Fe. I'm Royal Day. Thank you for joining us for KOAT's
This is Zozobra, Legacy of Fire.
Welcome to Fort Marcy Park in Santa Fe. I'm Royal Day. Thank you for joining us for KOAT's Zozobra, Legacy of Fire. This is a very special night. For the next 2 hours, we will be celebrating a New Mexico tradition. Each Friday before Labor Day, this park is packed with people to watch Zozobra burn. Tonight, the tradition continues with a pandemic twist. Big crowds are not allowed, so Old Man Gloom will burn basically alone. Typically, about 65,000 people are here chanting, "Burn him down." But you'll have to chant from your couches. This year, you can only watch Zozobra burn live right here on KOAT. Old Man Gloom burns in about an hour, but first, we want to take you behind the scenes of the event. We show you how it started and why it means so much to New Mexicans. In March, the governor issued a ban on mass gatherings, and members of the Kiwanis Club who organized the burning of Zozobra knew this year's tradition would be different. Even the process of building the 50-foot marionette was different, with workers focusing on making social distancing a priority and keeping masks on while they worked. You may have expected to see Zozobra wearing a mask this year. Well, he's not, and we'll explain why later. Before you can understand that, you need to understand what he's all about. Just listen to him moan. This was last year. He's a really big, scary puppet that groans while he burns to the ground. But he represents your sorrow inside or your anguish. That's what Zozobra loosely translates to in Spanish, anxiety. So when he burns, your anxiety burns too and goes away. And boy, we could all use a little bit of that this year. The roars of Zozobra, Old Man Gloom thrashing as he burns to the ground. It's all so beautiful.
The concept is an idea where you can bring the community together in order to get rid of what's bothering you. So what people would do is they would stuff in anything that kind of bothered them, and then the boogeyman would be burned and everybody could then celebrate a happy fiesta.
Speaking of those glooms, they've sold thousands of them already to be stuffed inside the big puppet. And some people put in wedding dresses, bills, anything they want to move past.
There's no religious purpose to this. This is an opportunity for people to take a break, really think about what's bothering them, either externally or internally, write it down, submit it in, put it into Zozobra, and have that cleanse, if you will, that community cleanse when your gloom is burned.
And 2020 is looking to be like a great year to get rid of some baggage. This pandemic is just the gloom all of us would like to turn around.
It is a great opportunity to kind of put all of that on pause and to reflect on what have you done to cause someone gloom in your life in the last year, or what are you holding on to that is causing gloom? So, as you watch the flames tonight and hear the groans, know this: as he burns down, so do all our hardships, and then it's time for a fresh start. A lot of the materials for Zozobra are actually donated by local businesses. To understand this celebration, you have to understand its origins.
3 days of fun and fiesta, which always come on Labor Day weekend, are ushered in by the burning of Zozobra, or Old Man Gloom, on a hill overlooking the city.
For more than 300 years, people in Santa Fe have been celebrating Las Fiestas de Santa Fe, an event created to commemorate the taking back of the area in 1692, a dozen years after the Pueblo Revolt. It's evolved over the years. It no longer features a ceremony called La Entrada, or a reenactment of the Spanish conquest. That event stopped in 2017 after organizers from Native American groups protested, saying it softened the depiction of the Spanish conquistadors and was a painful reminder of New Mexico's bloody past. It's typically an event celebrated on the Santa Fe Plaza with food, music, and crafts. Zozobra began because of fiestas. In 1924, a man named Will Schuster felt the event was too religious and too commercialized. So he and several friends created a new show, a parade making fun of the religious traditions, and the event ended with the burning of an effigy in his Santa Fe backyard. In today's terms, you might call Schuster a hippie, but in the 1920s here in Santa Fe, he was called a nut. In fact, he lived with 4 artists, and the whole town referred to them as 5 nuts in a hut. Shelby Cashman spoke to his granddaughter about how the tradition of burning Old Man Gloom began.
The year 1920, World War I over, the U.S. economy in a depression. And Will Schuster had just shown up in Santa Fe.
So he comes in 1920 really believing that he has a very limited amount of time left.
Will was suffering from tuberculosis after being mustard gas during the war. A Philly native, the doctor prescribed him some good old-fashioned Southwest air.
Gradually gets better. He goes hiking, he increases his lung capacity, and goes on to live another 44 years.
Starting over in the land of enchantment, Will decided to become an artist and found himself a group of fellow free spirits who called themselves Los Cinco Pintores, or the Five Painters.
I have a friend who's a bartender at the Matador, and I'm told that they still leave a shot glass out on the table for Will Schuster, even now.
But how did a love of drinking, partying, and practical jokes lead to the burning of a giant monster? Well, it all started one Christmas Eve. Times were tough. No one had any money. And Will was not having any more of his friends' gloom.
He decided that everybody needed to write down what was bothering them, and he gathered it in the middle of the table and set it on fire.
And so it began. Will himself was still dealing with his own PTSD from World War I.
He has a depression that he's struggling with for much of the 1920s, and I think Zozobra was also a way for him to really exercise that depression.
And also, it's really fun to drink and burn things.
That's Will's great-granddaughter, Kate Schuster.
There are many of these legends that float around in my family about the parties that he would have.
Around this time, toward the mid to late 1920s, the Fiesta de Santa Fe, a way to celebrate the history of how the city came to be, became an event where you needed to buy a ticket.
Will and his artist friends, who were pretty much bohemians in Santa Fe, found Fiesta very stuffy.
And that's when Zozobra expanded from the bar top that fateful Christmas Eve. Afterwards, Will actually traveled down to Mexico and witnessed the burning of an effigy. So he decided to combine those two ideas. Plus, they wanted to break away from Fiesta and start their own traditions. So you can see here actually some of the very first drawings of Zozobra's head. And in these writings, Will talks about the materials he would use and how it would be constructed. And it all started in his backyard.
Just pouring kerosene on this thing in your backyard, and then they moved it closer to the plaza, and they were still pouring kerosene on it.
That first backyard burning was in 1924, and by 1930, legend of Zozobra spread. Working with the Santa Fe New Mexican, Will published a series of fake news stories about the giant monster on a rampage through the countryside and finally being captured, brought back to Santa Fe, and burned. And as his great-granddaughter told me, Will may have spent the back half of his life creating this legend as a way for people to escape. But the legend of Will Schuster himself, well, that's something that can never be burned away.
It's such an honor to be associated with something that makes so many people so happy.
The Santa Fe Fiesta Council decided to invite Zozobra to become a part of Fiestas in 1926. That was the first year the public was invited to watch the burning. Today, they are two separate events. Schuster created Old Man Gloom and the mythology that goes along with them. He wanted to make sure the tradition lived on forever. In 1964, he gave the rights to the Kiwanis Club of Santa Fe, and to this day, they own the copyrights and trademarks to the character. And the club uses the event as a huge fundraiser to give back to children in New Mexico. Marissa Armas shows us some of the kids who benefit.
For these kids,
we cook all kinds of snacks and stuff.
the kitchen is their classroom.
They made fun foods. We got the slice and we get to do all those stuff. And the teachers were cool.
Amberly Lopez and Kai Hamilton were both part of the Santa Fe-based organization Cooking with Kids.
We cook foods from around the world, expose kids to all sorts of different cultures and flavors. And we say we travel with our taste buds.
They also work to teach kids how to make healthier food choices.
You know, last decades there's been a shift in homes where families aren't cooking as much as they used to, and children's health, suffering.
Cooking with Kids is just one of several local organizations that gets grant money from the Santa Fe Kiwanis Club through the proceeds that they raise from the annual Zozobra event.
It helps us to bring our programming to more kids. The other thing that it does, though, is People know what Zozobra is. It's not an obscure foundation or an obscure government grant. It's a big deal, so we get to celebrate it.
Another organization the Kiwanis Foundation has helped with these Zozobra grants is the Esperanza Shelter, and they've helped dozens of kids around our state.
We serve victims of domestic violence, and we like to say that they're survivors. They come into our shelter because they need to escape and they need a safe place to be housed and receive services.
98% of the people Esperanza Shelter helps are women and children, and the money they get from Zozobra goes specifically to their Seeds of Hope program.
We needed programming that was specific for the trauma to the nervous system and brain development and secure attachment that happens when children witness domestic violence.
That money helps them buy infant mental health equipment like therapy swings, art supplies, and sand trays.
To be able to get the equipment that would help regulate the kids' nervous systems, it directly impacts the children's therapeutic progress.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, some of these groups were a little worried that Zozobra wouldn't happen, which would have impacted some of their resources.
We were worried on a financial level. We were also worried about the impact it would have on our city.
The services are always critical, but right now, domestic violence survivors and their children are suffering, and they need the help even more. I'm just so grateful that they found a solution.
A solution that keeps the old men and the kitchen stove burning.
And normally, Zozobra brings in around $100,000 each year to help pay for these programs. But this is not a normal year. Still, you can help us right now. Just head on over to KOAT.com and you'll find a link on the homepage. There's still time to buy a Gloom, and you can see it burn right here tonight. Or you can pick up some merchandise. A portion of your purchase will help fund these programs.
We've never missed a fiesta.
This event has some die-hard fans, from what they wear to what they eat. This family celebrates Zozobra like none other. Next on Zozobra, Legacy of Fire, we show you how they honor the tradition and how you can become a superfan too.
Oh, this is a nice one here. This is...
Welcome back to Zozobra, Legacy of Fire.
Welcome to the Santa Fe Plaza. This is an area rich with history. It was first settled in the early 1600s. This is the site of the Santa Fe Fiestas each year, and it's where Zozobra began. Many people who celebrate fiestas say it is a tradition that runs deep in their family. Brittany Hope shares one family story.
You feel like a princess in your fiesta dress. There's nothing like twirling in your fiesta dress.
Oh, when I wear my fiesta dress, I feel pretty. I feel like fun is going to be had.
Decades of dresses.
The dresses for our family started since we were born.
A tradition in her blood.
Time goes on and heritage goes on.
And this is your heritage.
Mm-hmm. We picked a strange one because I have more closet space than anybody in Santa Fe, I think.
She is not kidding. 300. That's how many fiesta dresses Diana Montoya Capshaw has in her collection.
But look at the work on this. It's a bitone. It's got more than 2 colors.
It started with her grandpa when she was just a little girl.
And my grandfather was the office manager at Gans.
Gans was the store in Santa Fe that made fiesta dresses. Grandpa would give each of his grandchildren a brand new dress to wear to the burning of the Zozobra and the Santa Fe Fiestas. Now Diana throws huge parties for the fiestas and the Zozobra, and all the women wear her dresses.
The party started 70 years ago for the Capshaw family, and so there has been a party at this house ever since.
This year, the first time that tradition will not happen because of COVID, but this tradition will.
They have like a Smithsonian level collection of these dresses.
She's passing the prized possessions on to the younger generation, like her niece, Jenny.
I'm lucky enough to be able to wear them, and it's like being part of the deep-rooted tradition of Santa Fe.
Diana's sister Sylvia, too, carrying on the family's greatest joy.
We've never missed a fiesta. If you keep the traditions alive, they'll stay alive.
Speaking of tradition, along her backyard gate is where Old Man Gloom goes up in flames. And it will be different this year.
Our world is not as quite as beautiful this year as it has been in other years. But I think the burning of Zozobra lets you know that it's a new day, though.
As Old Man Gloom burns today, the Capshaw Montoya family will be fit in their fiesta best.
And they aren't the only family making Zozobra an annual tradition. Each year, people from all over our community work for their chance to be showcased in the festivities. Whether it's singing the national anthem or dancing in the show, Zozobra brings people together. One big way organizers work to get people involved is the annual art contest.
I take pride in my work, and I'm glad that people like my artwork.
Estrella Romero won the student poster contest this year. The official 2020 poster was designed by Joshua Gonzalez. People love to collect these things. These are some of the posters from years past. All of them represent each year of Zozobra, and many of the artists have been at it for decades. Zozobra has become part of our culture. Just walking around Santa Fe, you can see signs of him everywhere. Shelley Rabendo explains how it's taken on such a life of its own.
It's just an iconic figure for this town.
You can't go anywhere in Santa Fe without seeing his face. Murals on buildings or painted in restaurants, his story runs deep in the community.
He has become a part of popular culture.
Many know nothing about his creator.
If you were to go around Santa Fe and ask people, do you know who Will Schuester is, you're going to get mixed responses. But if you ask them what Zozobra is, everybody's going to know what Zozobra is.
Inspiring young minds.
My son went to the Little Earth School for years, and they would build a Zozobra and burn him.
And serving as inspiration to a new generation of artists.
I don't know that there's been a moment in the Santa Fe art scene where you wouldn't see him appear in one way or another.
Well, I think a lot of artists have taken it on in a really spirited way.
Katie Kidd uses Zozobra in her work.
The cathedral is a huge landmark in town, and it has its own history, as does lowrider culture. And then same with Zozobra. Like, those three elements to me are totally New Mexican, totally Santa Fe.
She's not alone. It's been going on for years.
I'm particularly interested in this piece. It's his depiction of Santa Fe's most infamous monster.
Deep in the archives of the New Mexico Museum of Art, a painting by Fritz Scholder.
To sympathize with that monster is pretty deep, and to think about him not as something that's threatening the community, but a martyr for the community.
Schuester often including Zozobra in his paintings as well.
So it's a little bit of an uncommon composition for a painting.
Created in 1964, this piece is significant.
It was the last year that he kind of built and burned Zozobra himself. That year he handed it off to the Kiwanis Club.
Schuester was getting older, and constructing the large marionette was becoming more difficult.
He wanted to reflect on his creation and everything that it represented, and he was able to do so in paint far more effectively than he was in terms of the massive marionette that ultimately Zozobra becomes.
Sold to the state in 1992, this piece is now a part of our community.
So to have that piece up at the Roundhouse really speaks to the role of Zozobra in the community here in New Mexico.
Showing how one man's vision can impact all of us.
He has a different meaning to everyone, and so I think that's why you see so many artists that have treated the subject over time.
This year marks 100 years since Will Schuester's arrival in Santa Fe. And to celebrate, the New Mexico Museum of Art is getting ready to open a brand new exhibit to showcase his work. A Fiery Light, Will Schuester's New Mexico, opens later this year. Well, Zozobra has also been recognized on the national stage. In 1950, he was afloat in the Rose Parade when the state commissioned Schuester to create a design of his own. You know what he looks like. You know when he burns, your anxiety and sadness do too. But do you really know his whole story? Up next, the grumpy creature who lives in the mountains and how he ends up here once a year in Santa Fe to give you hope.
You're watching Zozobra, Legacy of Fire.
When Will Schuester created Zozobra, he created the mythology that goes with him. It's a story of Old Man Gloom who lives in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. As the story goes, it's an invitation to a party here on the Santa Fe Plaza that draws him to town. So he puts on his formal attire and heads to town. Meow Wolf made this video explaining the whole story.
Zozobra is a monster. Make no mistake about that. This specter stays in hiding all year long, feeding on and gaining power from our failings and misdeeds. But once a year, we get a chance to cast out the darkness. We lure Zozobra into a trap. We invite him to the Fiesta de Santa Fe. The monster dresses to impress. But he comes to the party with his own wicked agenda, to rob the city different of its hope and spirit. As the party begins, Zozobra seizes the chance to enact his evil plan. He casts a spell on the children, turning them into an army of gloomies. But the torch-bearing townspeople fight back, recapturing the hearts and minds of the children. Zozobra rages. The people flee. Hope is scarce. Burn him. Burn him. Burn him. This summons the fire spirit, mortal enemy to Zozobra. And the dance begins. Burn him. Burn him. Burn him. She holds a torch to Zozobra, setting him ablaze. Victory belongs to the fire spirit, who restores Santa Fe's hope and goodwill. But Zozobra will rise again next year, as our human faults and failings return, inevitably, like weeds to a garden.
Whether it's writing down what's bothering you or bringing in parking tickets, divorce papers, or even medical records. In years past, people stuffed them inside a Zozobra. This year, social distancing is making the process a little bit different, and you can still take part. Right now is your last chance to buy a Gloom and make sure that it's burned tonight. Head on over to KOAT.com, and for $1, you can send in your anguish online. Organizers will print it out, and it will be placed inside of Old Man Gloom. This online process has really helped expand Zozobra's tradition. Just look at this map. People worldwide are sharing their Glooms. Burning a 50-foot puppet in the middle of town takes some planning.
We're the ones that bring him alive.
Up next, we show you what you've never seen, a behind-the-curtain look at the Zozobra show. And this year, he has a new voice. Meet the man behind the moaning, how he's carrying on this important part of the event. Welcome back to Zozobra Legacy of Fire. This is Ground Zero. This is where it all began this year, where Zozobra was built. A team has been in this warehouse in Santa Fe for months building this huge puppet, and here he is. Building this every year is a massive undertaking, and I'm going to show you how it's done.
It's about to be fall in New Mexico, and those green chili roasters are firing up. And so do the Zozobra sewing machines.
We still work with the same frames. The interesting thing about Zozobra is he has the same solid form that he's had for now the 96 years, but it really turns to the artist that is creating Zozobra.
That's Jacob Romero, the lead designer of Zozobra. Look at all the fabric that goes into this. His head is massive. All that hair is shredded paper. Here's a peek at the back of the head. That wood frame took a lot of time to shape. The construction and staging of Zozobra is quite an action-packed effort. It's a labor-intensive affair requiring more than 3,500 volunteer hours put in by Kiwanis Club members and enthusiastic volunteers, some of whom have been involved with Zozobra for years. Matt Horowitz is the construction chair.
We've got lawyers and doctors and teenagers. So you get people that are priests and and you name it.
But this time, because of the pandemic, the process has changed.
We're doing the same thing we would normally do, but we're just doing it in little pieces, a little bit by bit, to make sure that people are safe. For a long time, it was maybe about 2 or 3 weeks, and this year we're taking about 3 months to do it. And that's because of the pandemic and because we can't have more than small groups of people working at any one given time.
Zozobra is a well-crafted framework of milled lumber covered with dozens of rolls of chicken wire and more than 70 yards of cotton cloth. It'll be strung up on a 55-foot pole with a 12-foot crossbar. Zozobra's head and sections of his insides are laced with explosives. The steel wires attached to his arms, head, and mouth allow his movements to be manipulated from the ground by a group of skilled animators.
You kind of can't help but feel like a little kid, right? You have this 50-foot marionette and you have a cord that you just naturally want to pull on, right? You have a bolt on the arm that gives the arm its simple up and down motion. So it takes a good crew of 4 people to pull that solid arm all the way up. And because gravity's working against it, it comes down pretty heavy.
Zozobra right now remains motionless until darkness falls, then it all begins. As he burns down, so will all of our gloom. In our heads, we'll be chanting,
I think that in a year like this, where so many people are really hurting, it means a lot.
Or maybe this year, burn COVID down.
Through the years, Zozobra got taller and taller. The first Zozobra the public was able to watch burn was about 20 feet tall, and over the years, he grew. Since 1989, he's measured at 50 feet 6 inches, setting a world record in 2007 as the tallest marionette. But the record only lasted a year after being beat by a puppet in Canada, measuring 58 feet 5.5 inches tall. The pageantry of Zozobra has always been a sight to see, eventually adding what are known as gloomies. It's said that Zozobra works his dark magic, casting a spell on the children of Santa Fe, driving hope and happiness from their minds and hearts, and replacing it with gloom and despair. The gloomies take commands from Zozobra, causing havoc on the city and spreading fear and sorrow. But when the townsfolk bear torches challenging the gloom, the gloomies snap back to reality, becoming children once again. Kids ages 11 to 14 audition to be a gloomy, and some say it's a local badge of honor.
Waving a pair of blazing torches, the fire spirit dances, tormenting Zozobra. But who is the fire spirit? Todd Kurtz introduces us to the dancer and shares the history of this exclusive group of performers.
The fire spirit is Zozobra's arch enemy. Dressed in all red, armed with a pair of blazing torches. When you see the dancer, you know Zozobra's reign of terror is about to go up in flames. But in real life, Helene Luna is very sweet.
I've been dancing in front of Zozobra since 1996.
The Santa Fe native now lives in Colorado, but her highlight every year is coming back home to be the fire dancer at Zozobra.
I remember going to Zozobra when you could still drive cars in. There's pictures of me on my dad's shoulders. I just was mesmerized by the fire dancer.
Her rise to the coveted spot took time. She auditioned back in the 90s and at the time got a newly created role at Zozobra, Queen of the Gloom. It'd take 11 more years before being passed the torch.
Since I had been dancing since 1996, when it came time for a new fire dancer, they went to me, and I was very lucky.
Lucky because it's rare for the torch to be passed on. Luna is just the 6th fire dancer in the nearly 100 years of Zozobra. Here's a picture of the man who did it the longest. Jacques Cartier, the ballet dancer from New York, came to Santa Fe for 37 straight years to be fire dancer. He was succeeded in 1970 by his student, Chip Lilienthal. There's Chip in 87. Look at Zozobra's reaction, almost to say, oh boy, here we go again. 2 of Chip's daughters have also played fire spirit. Here's one of them dancing in 2004. And then Luna has been torching Old Man Gloom since 2007. This year brings the extra challenge of not having her fuel, the crowd.
The crowd creates this fire spirit to get rid of all the gloom. So the minute you go out there and you hear this energy, that's what drives you. So this year, it's coming from the heart.
And it's a workout. The job takes training. She's been dancing ballet since after college. Still takes 4 to 5 dance classes a week. And then has her own weight regimen to get her arms just right for the big night.
Now I run with weights. So I have my little 5 pound. And I'm walking through my neighborhood and running with my hands up like this. Let me see if you can see. With my arms up, because those torches are heavy.
And from a distance, we'll be cheering her on the whole way. Hey, a native Santa Fean is our fire dancer, and she absolutely loves it.
It's fun to go out there and hear the crowd and dance and do this incredible thing, but at the end of the day, it's about giving back too. This is my home.
Luna says she doesn't plan on retiring anytime soon, but when the time is right, she would be happy to pass the literal torch to the next eager dancer. The voice of Zozobra is a really important part of the show. The first Zozobra didn't growl, moan, or groan. Those sounds were put into the show over the years. This year, opera singer Anthony Michaels Moore is the voice behind the beast. It will be his first time performing at the event. He has been working to understand the story and says he has some big plans to make his performance different from years past.
It's more, I'm going to be back next year. You can burn me now, but I'll be back. And that has to be done through a growl. It's that sort of idea. So what I have to work on is 5-minute sessions modulating that idea.
He tells us he's been practicing by reading to his children and acting out character voices. Well, the process of making sure this show happens takes a lot of work. Sasha Leninger shows us how it's all done safely.
Starting off like this, and quickly turning into this in just minutes. A lot goes on behind the scenes to create what we all see.
We're the ones that bring him alive. He sits there and looks at the crowd, and then at a certain point we start moving him.
Ronald Martinez is the animation director for Zozobra. He's been doing it for 25 years, along with a team of at least 14 others.
It takes 5 men on each arm.
Then one person moves the head, another moves the mouth. Before the event, the team has a rehearsal.
We go through what the show's going to be like, and we bring it to the people.
Once the big day arrives, it is game time.
We just make sure that on top of the hill, everything is totally secure. Nobody but the people that are involved are allowed on the hill.
Everyone has a specific entrance to the stage, and each crew member has protective gear that they are required to wear.
We wear fire jackets, helmets, goggles, masks, gloves. It's so unsafe for anybody with a camera back there or anything, because there's wires going here, there's fireworks behind us. We're probably 15 feet away from the fireworks.
We did ask Martinez what else happens backstage that we would never get a glimpse of. He says not much of that has been released to the public, and they want to keep it a secret.
We really take care of all those little intricate things.
A fantastic and memorable show indeed. With all of our glooms going up in smoke and turning into ash, cleansing our worlds of the bad and making room for the good to come.
He says there's not much chaos happening behind the scenes because everything is fine-tuned leading up to the big show.
He becomes the monsters that we need him to be at any given time.
Up next, how he's changed over the years and how this year he'll give us hope. And what's inside Zozobra? The strange things burned and a new idea born from the pandemic. After 96 years, this old man still looks good, but he doesn't ever look the same. Each year, he grows taller, wears new clothes, or changes his hair. Sasha Leninger takes us through the evolution of Old Man Gloom.
He's one of the most notorious characters in New Mexico.
I fell in love with the guy. I always say he was my first boyfriend.
You can call him a chameleon of the times. These black and white photos show Zozobra in the early years and key points in our history, like this one from World War II, his appearance reflecting a cross between Hitler and Hirohito. Then, as the years go on, Zozobra becomes the monster we need him to be, the villain of America.
All the design and the planning for Zozobra is done around the decade of his history.
In this video from 1982, you can see the marionette with buttons along his top and a black belt. Then, in 1984, he ditched some of his buttons for a bow tie, which would become his iconic looks in the years to come. And in 85 and 86, he had orange hair. Then the 90s, Zozobra chose this look. yellow locks along with his bow tie. Fast forward to the early 2000s, Old Man Gloom donned several looks. The easiest change to see, though, his hair. From white to red to purple and then to orange.
Other than the fact that he's gotten bigger, I think the biggest change that we've done is in 2014, we added the Decades Project.
It starts with the 1920s and is a way to highlight each decade, each year as we get closer to Old Man Gloom's 100th birthday.
He was a snidely whiplash guy with a big mustache. Then we moved on to the 30s. He was old, bald, and fat because, of course, that was the Depression era.
You can see what's left of his white hair and the one button on his top. Then 2016.
The 40s, we have the World War II era. That was a really big deal for us. That was really important because we were able to mark the 75th anniversary of the Holocaust.
Old Man Gloom was dressed for the occasion with his double-breasted top, a fedora, and a black tie.
Part of the Decades Project is to teach children about their past, not just Zosobra's past, but what happened in New Mexico, what happened in the world.
That same year, the night before the event, a candlelight vigil paying tribute to victims and survivors of the Holocaust. 2017, honoring the 50s.
He was wearing a cardigan sweater, and of course I like to say he was Father Noah's worst instead of Father Noah's best.
Donning red hair to match his bright red nails.
And then in the 60s, we really rolled out the entire hippie era.
2018 was all groovy, baby. Staff dressed in tie-dye, Old Man Gloom with a silver updo and a bolo tie. Look closer at his hands. That's a peace sign on his fingers. Last year, disco was out to play. Coming in at 50 feet 6 inches tall, it was all about the John Travolta look. White suit, gold medallion, blonde hair, his eyes a memorable avocado green color, and his burnt orange lips. This is the first time his lips have changed color.
2020 was slated to take us back to the 80s, but that's on hold until next year. Event organizers want this year's focus to be coronavirus. But you won't see the giant marionette wearing a mask. Instead, the show honors first responders like healthcare workers. So, what will he look like? His gray hair taking on the look of the virus itself, seen here with orange ping pong balls and red hair scrunchies. His cufflinks will resemble those murder hornets. They'll be dipped in gold to bring out his formal attire. And the buttons on his jacket will be stamped with the year 2020. All of this will go up in smoke as our worries are lifted away. The pandemic can't break the tradition of Zozobra, and one local company is making it easier for you to get in on the fun from home. Reality Times 2 created this app that brings merchandise to life. Check out this shirt. You can see Old Man Gloom holding a puppet of his own. And look how this poster allows you to see a 5-foot-tall Zozobra and fire dancer wherever you are, allowing you to create your own show.
It's also a way to cheer up and kind of get past the gloom. The whole idea behind Zozobra was to burn up your gloom. So we're trying to give you a little bit more fun way, even though you can't go to the event, where you can do that at home.
These items are still on sale, and you can find a link to buy them at KOAT.com. Remember, all proceeds go to programs helping kids. As the popularity of Zozobra grows, more and more people are going to the event. In fact, last year, more than 60,000 people were in the park watching him burn. That's what makes Fort Marcy Park such a great spot for this. But Old Man Gloom hasn't always appeared there. The first 2 years, he met his demise in the backyard of a Santa Fe home. Then in 1926, the beast fell to ashes behind the old city hall. The Kiwanis Club of Santa Fe tells us the first burning here was in 1933. Zozobra has even made his way out of the park and onto the big screen.
You can see him parading around in what looks like the Santa Fe Plaza in this 1947 film, Ride the Pink Horse. And the actual 1976 Zozobra appeared in the film Southern Double Cross. But he really made an impression in 1988 when Dennis Hopper paid the club $7,000 to create a full-size Zozobra just for the film Backtrack. This puppet was constructed exactly like the real thing and burned in towels for a scene.
Did you know Zozobra has relatives? He has a cousin named Tio Coco that translates to Uncle Boogeyman. I know what you're thinking. I said it's his cousin and I said Tio. Well, Will Schuester didn't know Spanish that well, but the name stuck. The legend with Tio Coco is that Zozobra summons him to attend appearances on his behalf. Now, the backstory on this dates back to 1940 and the Ronald Reagan movie Santa Fe Trail. When the movie was released and a big party was planned in Santa Fe, the city wanted to burn Old Man Gloom for the event, but Schuster wanted to keep that special, so he created a new character instead.
It didn't look anything at all like the Zozobras he was constructing at that time. It was very humanistic.
Tio Coco has only made 3 appearances. The first for that movie premiere in 1940. He didn't appear again for 73 years when he was invited back for a private Kiwanis event, looking a bit more like what we're used to. In 2018, then Governor Susana Martinez hosted governors from around the nation. This burning was held just for them at Fort Marcy Park. You all know when he burns, he's filled with gloom, but it's not just what's been written down that burns. Nancy Laughlin has more on some of the strangest things, like Marilyn Monroe's dresses, to the most common and heartfelt items people have given to Old Man Gloom.
He is massive. This big guy has a lot on his plate. His responsibility to get rid of the troubles of thousands of people.
So I've been volunteering with Zozobra at the Gloom Table for at least 15 years.
Some memories that stand out?
There was a man that came one year, and I have always remembered him because he was carrying something, and I couldn't see what it was first, in plastic, and it turned out to be clothing of his covered in blood from a near-fatal motorcycle accident he'd been in.
From broken bones to broken hearts and pink slips.
They bring their divorce papers, they bring their letters if they've lost their jobs, they bring financial documents, especially during the financial crisis. We had a lot of mortgage documents.
All of this is supposed to burn away the past to celebrate the future.
It's always really moving when we've had a lot of women come in groups who bring their clear mammogram scans when they've kind of gone for follow-ups after beating breast cancer.
From the practical to the really unusual. Remember this man?
Marilyn Monroe was, to me, she was like a kitten that wanted to be loved. And she was used by many people.
A few years back, we interviewed a man named Ray, who said he was a dancer and dear friends with Marilyn Monroe.
I did a lot of musicals, and that's how I met her.
Ray told us he has treasured pieces of her wardrobe that at auction could go for a lot of money. Ray, though, said he had different plans for Marilyn's clothing. It would go to one man. This man, Old Man Gloom.
Makes me very sad to talk about her because I was very close to her.
Back then, we were told that was part of Ray's will. Whether Marilyn's clothing actually went up in this, we don't know. What goes up in flames is kept confidential if the person requests that. Julia says now more than ever, she believes a lot of people will have pieces of the past or present they would like to leave behind.
This year, I'm guessing almost everyone will have something that they can feel gloomy about.
And this creepy guy, well, tradition is he just may do the trick.
We all know 2020 has been a rough year. So one Santa Fe native came up with an idea to burn away this year's gloom by filling him with calendars.
Let's put him in Zozobra and get rid of all this bad omen that we've had over the past 8 or 9 months.
Tonight, this puppet is packed with hundreds of calendars ready to go up in smoke. This annual tradition began almost a century ago, born at a bar as one man vented his frustrations to his grumpy friends. It grew into an event to help our community and people all over the world heal. Will Schuster lived to see it grow into what it is today. And before he died, he said this.
The look in the youngsters' faces as they saw this monster who might have stepped out of a fairy tale go up in smoke, that is a reason for Zozobra. He appeals to the childish fancy in all of us. It is a scene from a fairy tale of our own making.
Kids today are still growing up with this fairy tale. We asked several of them what Zozobra means to them, and here's what they told us.
People gather around, they write their glooms, they put them into Zozobra. You can put your glooms and stuff in there.
You put them in this big stuffed guy.
And they burn him down to ash. They say he's cold and he's fiery.
And they're like a big monster. He just makes a roaring noise and moves his hands around.
Because he always yells.
It's loud.
And he's mad that you think that you're gonna burn him. He's big and sometimes he scares me.
He's 50 feet tall.
He's a big. Back and forth, and then his head moves. The little fire dancer or the gloom things, the little ghosts.
They like come up the stage and then they like dance up the stairs and then they light him on fire.
His hands are like sparks down, and then his face goes on fire.
I feel happy because like it takes all my family's stress away, and it's tradition.
Thank you for joining us for Zozobra Legacy of Fire. It's been fun learning more about the history of this tradition with all of you tonight, but now it's time to watch him burn. It's been a difficult year. We all have gloom, anguish, and despair. This pandemic has been really tough. And tonight, his burning lets us get rid of it, and it gives us hope. Let's do it together after the break. Zozobra Live is next.
Over soon, so get ready. Zozobra, here we go. You're going down tonight.
Us, the performers in the show you'll see, and all of you watching from home.
Ray Sandoval is the main organizer for Zozobra. He is with the Kiwanis Club of Santa Fe. Now, when the governor called for a ban on mass gatherings, everybody put their head together and said, this has got to happen. Important in the challenging
time. With full hearts, ready to help in need of our own special way. I challenge you to find a little time in your busy schedule.
Compra tus boletos para el sorteo St. Jude Dream Home antes del viernes 5 de junio y podrás ganar una casa, una...
Welcome back live to Fort Marcy Park in Santa Fe.
Zozobra is behind us here, stuffed with all your glooms. In fact, 100,000 of them from all around the world tonight. And take a look around at the field here. Because of the pandemic, it's mostly empty. The only people here are the organizers for Zozobra. The